Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Happy 2022. And welcome to this year's first meeting of the Community and Cultural Investment Subcommittee. This subcommittee focuses on our city efforts around sustainability and recycling our neighborhoods, parks, arts, libraries, education, and Head Start and homelessness. I would like to call this meeting to order. Today's date is January 5th, 2022, and the time is 10:04 a.m. So we will start today's meeting with the call to the public. Are there any cards requesting to speak during the call to public today?
Chairwoman, we do not have any call to the public.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much for that. So next we will move to approve the minutes of last month's subcommittee meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of this subcommittee from December 1st, 2021?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. The motion passes. Anyone opposed? No. Okay. Minutes of the Land Use and Livability Subcommittee. Next on the agenda are the consent items 2 and 3. Do we have any speaker cards on these items, Nick?
Chairwoman, we do not.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve for consent items 2 and 3?
I'll move.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you for that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. The motion passes, and that's for retroactive authorization for school sustainability program grant and rental rehabilitation program project award. Next on the agenda are items 4 and 5 for information only. Would any of my colleagues like to hear more information on these items?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Ansari?
I'm good as well, thank you.
Great. Okay, so from there, and that was item 4, Head Start Birth to 5 monthly report, November 2021. Item 5, reclaimed asphalt pavement wrap update. And from there, we will move to information and discussion. We will now move to items 6 and 7, which are for information and discussion. We will begin with item 6 on the downtown homeless service enhancements.
Good morning, Chairwoman Guardado and subcommittee members. We're here this morning to provide an overview of the city's downtown homeless services enhancements added as part of the budget for this year. I'm also here with Human Services Director Marshall Franklin, who'll be presenting with me. In the audience, we have staff from Neighborhood Services, Public Works, Street Transportation, Planning, and Police departments as well. When we discuss downtown services, we're referencing the area bounded by the freeways, I-10 on the north and east, and I-17 on the south and west. In addition to the ongoing service enhancements the city is providing, staff are in ongoing discussions about how to improve services in the area immediately surrounding the Human Services campus. These discussions have included neighborhood leaders, campus staff and service providers, and others to discuss ways to improve our partnerships and specifically related to the cleanups. Items discussed include information sharing and communication, the availability of restrooms, notifications of the cleanups, and outreach and engagement of those experiencing homelessness. I wanted to update you on 2 long-planned enhancements that have recently been implemented by providers. The city provided 300 solid waste bins to the Human Services campus to be used for individuals experiencing homelessness to store their belongings. The campus recently began its safe storage program, and this was in December of 2021. In addition, the Human Services campus opened up restrooms 24 hours, 7 days a week at the Brian Garcia Welcome Center. These were previously open until 11 p.m. and provides a much needed facilities for those experiencing homelessness in the area. And now I'll turn the presentation over to Director Franklin to discuss the ongoing service enhancements.
Thank you, Ms. Montes. Good morning, Chairwoman and subcommittee members. In fiscal year 21-22 budget, the City Council approved adding the following positions and services dedicated solely to the downtown Phoenix area referenced by Ms. Montes. That included 1 neighborhood specialist, a solid waste supervisor, 2 equipment operators and the associated equipment needed for those cleanups, street cleanups around the Human Services campus, and a community action officer. Additionally, using Emergency Solutions grant funds, we implemented focused outreach to those experiencing homelessness in a 1-mile radius of the Human Services campus. Specific to our Neighborhood Services Department, that position was filled with an experienced neighborhood specialist who has already engaged community leaders, business owners, and other area stakeholders. This included a listening tour with Grant Park and Oakland Neighborhood Associations, Phoenix Revitalization Corporation, Madison Pioneers Coalition, and also included various city departments. Results from the listening sessions identified the need for more alley maintenance, street lighting, speed humps, street signage, focused code enforcement, addressing trespassing, and right-of-way maintenance. The assigned neighborhood specialists for this core will be leading a team to work with our community in the coming months to formulate an action plan to address the issues identified in this listening session, as well as assisting community members with any new issues that may arise. With our Public Works Department, we hired a supervisor and equipment operators, and in November of this year conducted 20 cleanups with 3.77 tons collected, with a total of 11.5 hours spent on-site cleaning, and in December conducted 18 cleanups with this dedicated team, which collected 3.3 tons, and a total of 8.5 hours were spent on-site with this cleaning. With the additional allocated funds, the Street Transportation Department has been able to continue cleanups around the Human Services campus 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as providing right-of-way sanitation once a month. This work is accomplished with a mix of city staff and contractors. And staff continues to work with our community, which includes neighborhoods and service providers, to minimize the impact of cleanups and reduce the overall time to conduct those necessary cleanups. Within our police department, the Dedicated Community Action Officer, or CAO, works closely with business and stakeholders to ensure seamless city services in support of targeted outreach efforts, cleanups, and addressing neighborhood complaints. The CAO also works very closely with the neighborhood specialist in addressing trespassing issues when there is an authority to arrest, and assists in conducting inspections and providing recommendations from crime prevention through environmental design or CPTED assessments. And finally, a dedicated outreach team was added, which is comprised of 6 navigators. From July 1st through December 1st of this year, 237 individuals have been contacted, of which 55 exited into various programs. And of those programs, there were 42 positive exits, which equates to a 76% positivity exit rate. And then also this team includes 5 emergency medical technicians, which made 783 medical-related contacts between July 1st and December of this year, which we know has helped reduce the number of medical-related calls that are being placed to 911. Chairwoman and subcommittee members, this concludes our presentation, and I will turn it back over to Deputy City Manager Montes.
Thank you, Director Franklin. That concludes our presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think we will start with Councilwoman Ansari.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you, Gina and Marshall, for the presentation. Couple of questions first. So as you will recall, over the summer, we called for a cooling bus that was made available during the hottest months of the year down by the campus. And Gina, when you and I went to observe the cleanups in December, Obviously, it was incredibly cold. And if you remember, a police officer asked about any heaters we can bring down there. So I'm just wondering if that's something that we can look into on a more permanent basis, maybe providing heaters during the winter time and coolers over the summer, where cleanups are happening for our unsheltered residents.
Thank you, Chairwoman, Councilwoman Ansari. That is something that we can definitely take a look at. We had those discussions, and over the holidays we need to begin the research and see what the possibilities might be, but we absolutely can take a look and see how feasible that would be.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. And then my other question is regarding the cleanups, which, I think good that we are proactively looking at this. I know that during our rainy days, our police officers often ask residents to shelter in place and push their trash onto the street for pickup. I'm wondering, in your most recent conversations, and I've been looking at the CDC guidelines around unsheltered residents, and I know there's been some updates there regarding whether it makes sense to have people move, given especially the Omicron variant that's now, ravaging our communities. So I'm just wondering whether we think it's necessary, absolutely necessary, to have folks move their belongings 3 times a week. Do you think that could be reduced at all? Not saying get rid of the cleanups, but just how we approach the cleanups and in terms of making people move their belongings and move themselves so many times per week.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Ansari. This is a complex issue, as you know. In order to get the area clean, because let me back up for a minute. The cleanups truly happen for the health and safety of those who are experiencing homelessness and the neighborhoods surrounding them. So we are looking very carefully at how they're conducted, whether or not people really need to move all of their belongings 3 times a week, and also coordinating with the Maricopa County and the Department of Health in terms of what makes the most sense. In order to get the area truly clean, the ground underneath where people are, the biohazards, the trash, there's food containers that are often there. Having people move is the way that we get it truly clean. Having observed the cleanups, when people aren't able to move, truly working with them, and I've observed it, and they're allowed to stay in place if they're not able to move, and definitely looking at the weather and rainy days and when it's muddy, and it would really make conditions pretty bad to requesting people to move. Those situations are taken on a case-by-case basis. We are looking at it. We're not ready at this point as staff to recommend that people not be asked to move. Given where we are with COVID, I think that is something that we're looking at what the CDC guidelines say, and we'll continue to coordinate with the Maricopa County and the Health Department in terms of what their guidance might be. And truly, we want to look out for the safety and the health of everyone there. Those who are experiencing homelessness are our residents as well, and we care about their well-being, and that is the reason that the cleanups occur. And while inconvenient, moving the belongings is something right now that we're still continuing, but we are looking very closely at how we can mitigate that. The addition of storage opportunities now on the Human Services campus allows for the opportunity for people who have things that they want to store, that they're worried about losing. They have the opportunity to do that. At Andre House, there is also an opportunity to have storage lockers as well that people can have access to. And so we really want to encourage people to take advantage of those opportunities. And I know the campus, starting up that program, people can access their items twice a day, and they have the ability to do that. So we really want to get the word out about that and really encourage people. But Councilwoman, I do hear what you're saying, and we will definitely continue to take a look at whether or not it makes sense to make any changes to asking people to move their items.
Thank you, Gina. I appreciate that. And I agree with you. Obviously, it's a very, very complicated and nuanced issue. And having observed the cleanups with you as well on the 20th, there's no doubt that they are helpful in terms of maintaining cleanliness and for public health reasons. I think, many of my colleagues have said several times, it's tough when we don't have a public health advisor at the city. So any way that we can get that expertise just to make sure that we're in line with CDC guidelines when it comes to unsheltered residents, just because I know that's just a recent update that they've made when it comes to the new variant and around having people move so many times. So I just want to make sure that we are constantly revisiting our cleanup policy, making sure that it's being executed in the safest way possible. And especially with the numbers having gone from 200 or so people to 500 individuals outside of the campus area, the last thing we need is COVID-19 spreading rampantly in that area as well. Also, just want to say that from your presentation, I'm so glad to see that CBI outreach teams are now alerting individuals of the cleanups. I know that was a change implemented this year, and I think it's been really great. And just want to use this opportunity to also re-emphasize how much I think we need 24/7 public bathrooms outside of the campus. So looking forward to continuing to work on that with you and Andre House and others. More sanitizing stations, heaters, coolers, more money for outreach teams, and of course, investments in smaller and more specialized housing with services around the city. So obviously those discussions will come up further at our January 11th work study for ARPA 2 and the next budget. But I think we just need those things as fast as possible. And also reading through CDC guidelines, there was significant emphasis made on sanitizing stations as well and more proactive outreach around COVID-19 information. So anything more we can do on that would be great. But thanks for all of your efforts on this. And thank you, Chairwoman.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
Councilwoman. Yes, Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. I'm sorry, for some reason my video is not working. My question has to do with Maricopa County. I know that you've been working very closely with their Department of Health Services. However, how are you working with their environmental services when it comes to street feeding and vector control? Do you have some system set up that you work with them on that? I know that can be a problem as well.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark. Members of the subcommittee, in terms of a formal agreement with Maricopa County Environmental Services, we don't have anything formal enacted right now in terms of vector control and the other items you discussed. Neighborhood services and code enforcement, they do have those contacts and they coordinate as needed when we have issues that arise with us. But I think that is a very good recommendation to us, and we'll see what more we can do with respect to coordinating more closely with Maricopa County Environmental Services, in addition to Department of Health.
Yeah, I'm just as a follow-up, I'm thinking that as you're out cleaning, perhaps the county can be out there as well, looking at the issues that they're charged with. Again, that has to do with street feeding and vector control. Obviously, if we don't keep the area clean, then we can see the critters come, and that is also a health issue as well. So I would appreciate if you could coordinate. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor Garcia.
Thank you. Mentioned at the beginning that there's still restrooms and trash cans. We've been told that some of those restrooms have been locked or that there's still not enough trash cans. Has there been shifts in how we set those up?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, Chairman Guardado. In terms of the trash receptacles, we have 6 of the larger dumpsters in the area. We had 3, and then in November we added an additional 3 to provide, more services for those. in and around the campus. Part of that was in anticipation of the holidays and additional giving that happens. And then part of it was just because of the need and because we had been requested to add more trash receptacles. We are looking at whether or not if we can pilot some smaller cans in shorter distances within the area. The dumpsters are spread out throughout, and so there is a pretty good access to it, but we have received feedback that it would be helpful to have some of the smaller cans. There are some logistics that we need to work out in coordination with the Human Services campus and what their plans may be as well. So I think we're continuing to look at how we can improve that piece. As far as the restrooms at the Welcome Center, we can look into whether or not they're locked at any point in time. My understanding is that they are now open 24/7. I will concede that there are 2 restrooms there, so there are a large amount of people in the area, and so there's definitely a need for more. But my understanding is that those are now open 24 hours a day. We are looking at alternatives for additional restrooms and want to get those in place as soon as we can, because we recognize the need and know that we need to make more provisions for that.
Then I had some questions around storage or lockers or whatever. I know there's some inside the campus or at Andre House. Is there a way we can support an expansion of that, whether it's supporting either Andre House, the campus, or somebody else? I think that's going to be key. And then have we supported in that before, or is that something that the organizations are doing on their own?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Chairman Guardado. We definitely are interested in how we can support additional storage. The city supported this particular program by providing the storage containers for them, and they were provided to the Human Services campus some time ago, and so it took a while for them to have the staff capacity to do that. There's definitely room for us to support that program and some expansion of the storage. What we have plans to do and what we need to do is coordinate even more closely with those partners in the area, and we are starting to do that in terms of the restrooms and just our communication in general, even more than we were before, and what exactly how that might look in terms of storage, where it would be in addition to the campus, is something that we need to do further research on and working with the partners in the area is what I would say. This particular storage program just got started up, and so I think to begin with, helping to promote that program and really with our outreach teams, in conjunction with the campus, who also has an outreach team that supports the media area, really encouraging people to use that resource that's available. Right now it's just getting started, so there's definitely room for improvement, and we have received that feedback that that's a very big need.
And the last couple of questions are around the cleanups around the campus. Well, first question's around the time. I know that some of the word we're getting is that it's sometimes early in the morning, and right now in the cold weather, it essentially exposes people back to the cold weather. I understand logistically it might be easier to do it in the morning, but is there a chance for us to start these a little bit later?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The cleanups, one of the changes that we made last fall was to move the cleanups. They were initially starting alerting people, notifying them at 5 in the morning. That's now starting at 6. And it is fairly early, but the cleanups themselves start at 8. That gives people notification to know that they need to clear the area so the ground can be cleaned during that process that begins at 8. There are a lot of factors to be balanced in considering this issue. One of them is really ensuring that people are more likely to be there. So with their belongings during the day, they're more likely to have gone to do other things, to receive services. accessing any of the resources in the area. And so they're more, for one thing, in the morning, they're more likely to be there. And then the second piece is the businesses and services surrounding there and access to the area. So in order to bring the machinery and the crews to clean, the streets are closed in sections, and we have received feedback from the businesses in having access and for if they have customers, if they have employees needing to get into the area. So the reason that it's done in the morning is to accommodate all of those issues. One of the things that we're looking at now is just working with streets and looking at their route and seeing, is there any way to make this better, to make it faster? One thing to remember is that with the crews, just like any other city function, sometimes we have illness, sometimes, if there's a holiday, it can affect the cleaning schedule as well. So what has worked well operationally, the best is, given all those factors, is doing them in the morning. Could it be a little bit later? That's something we are definitely looking at, and we will continue to assess if that's something that can be changed.
Yeah, I think especially during the winter months, it makes sense to push back a little later. Other question around the cleanups is, something the DOJ is looking at and something we've heard from community for a while about people's belongings. Just a question about how are we assuring that we're, being responsive to that and making sure folks' belongings aren't taken.
Yes, Vice Mayor, that's an issue that we as a city do take very seriously, and we're hearing the feedback from advocates and people in the area that is a major concern of theirs. And all I can say is that on a daily basis, when the cleanups happen, it is something that is taken very seriously. Accommodating people who can't move and ensuring that their belongings the crews will go around them. If someone can't move, they're told, in situations where the weather prohibits, makes it not advisable to have people move, asking them to put their trash in the street and then not cleaning that area. We will continue to look at the policies and how our practices are and see how we can improve that situation. It is something we take seriously and that we're examining as closely as we can.
Thank you all so much. I think in the next couple of weeks, as we decide the next allocation of funds for COVID relief or ARPA funds, it would be really helpful if you all could let us know if from those funds we could be more supportive in regards to restrooms, trash cans, lockers, making the cleanups easier, supporting the folks that are unsheltered a little bit more, and obviously I think figuring out more beds. And so thank you for this presentation. I know it's a difficult one. I hope we continue to find ways to support people that are out there, and also protect their rights at the same time. And so thank you all for this, and please let us know in the next couple of weeks as we make these decisions. I think getting more beds should be a priority. Unfortunately, last year we weren't able to expand the Andre House, but if there's any other possibilities of expanding beds there or other places, please let us know.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. So yes, thank you so much, everyone, for your presentation. I know this is not an easy conversation that we have every time, but I appreciate the leadership of Councilwoman Ansari and Vice Mayor Garcia to continue to bring these issues up. And yes, as a council, whatever we can do to continue to support you, Gina and Marshall, whatever we can do to be helpful and and we think out and we continue to think outside of the box on how is it that we can continue to provide funds or whatever we need to do to make the situation better, just let us know. So thank you so much for that. With that, are there any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, and we're gonna move on to item 7, and we're gonna get an update on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'm Cynthia Aguilar, Parks and Recreation Director. And at the Chairwoman's request, I'm here to provide you with an update on the status of the Parks Department's master plan. The last time a comprehensive master plan was developed for the Parks Department was back in 1988. We scanned a graphic in of it so you could see just how outdated it is just by looking at it. Our population has close to doubled since then, and while it has been 30 years since we've done our last system-wide master plan, we have developed individual master plans specific to parks and our preserve systems along the way to help continue guiding us through park improvements and development over these years. We certainly recognize the fact that our communities have grown and changed quite a bit over the years, and therefore we did take recent steps towards developing an updated master plan. In 2020, we expressed our intent to proceed with launching a master plan to the Parks and Recreation Board. Both board members and community members voiced overwhelming support for the project and for their desire to participate in the process. A successful master plan requires a tremendous amount of engagement with the community, and due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, planning efforts were temporarily postponed. While the pandemic continues, we are here today to provide you with an overview of the key areas that we still intend to focus on in our future master plan process. The master plan will include several focus areas, but most importantly, it provides us with an opportunity to have meaningful engagement with the public throughout the entire process. Key focus areas will include an evaluation and inventory of existing developed and undeveloped parks, recreation programming, and our park facilities. We will also assess community demographics and recreation trends to ensure we are delivering quality programs and services equitably across the entire city. The plan will also allow us to evaluate and prioritize how we utilize our various funding sources, such as our 3PI initiative funds, our grants, impact fees, and the general fund. As mentioned, community engagement plays such a critical role in developing a meaningful and successful master plan. Our goal is to reach as many people as possible across the city, including those who use our parks regularly and those who may not use our parks regularly, so that we can find out what barriers may exist for them. Our goal is to reach as many people, and to do this successfully, we must use a diverse range of methods to engage the public. So we've listed a few of these on the slide. We plan to do meetings in person and virtually. We plan to have neighborhood focus groups, public workshops, neighborhood community events. We plan to engage with youth through schools throughout Phoenix, community surveys, and we also plan to have a strong web presence and to use various social media tools for engagement. I do also want to note that all of our outreach will be done in both English and Spanish. As you can imagine, there are numerous community stakeholders we will need to engage with through this process. Key community stakeholders will include many of our nonprofit partners, such as our Heritage Square Foundation, Chispa Arizona, the Tovria Carrero Society, Keep Phoenix Beautiful, and so many more. We will also engage with neighborhood associations and community leaders. To name a few, this includes some of our strongest leaders, such as Muriel Smith, our Estrella Supermoms, Tupac Enriquez, Jeff Tizot, Jenny Ann Sumner, and so many more again. Additionally, we will work with local businesses, schools, and churches throughout the process as well. In addition to community stakeholders, we will also collaborate closely with city stakeholders. This includes our Parks and Recreation Board, our City Council, and multiple other city committees such as the Phoenix Sonoran Preserve and Mountain Parks Preserves Committee, 3PI Oversight and Aquatics Advisory Committees, ad hoc such as the Electrical Vehicle Ad Hoc Committee, our Village Planning Committees, and again, so many more. We will also engage with other city departments to ensure our final master plan supports and aligns well with our other citywide plans and initiatives such as Plan Phoenix and the Climate Action Plan. Phase 1 of the master process will really include the evaluation and assessments of our existing parks and recreation programs and facilities, and simultaneously it will also be or include the community engagement process where we engage the public through the methods previously mentioned. Phase 2 then follows and will include the formulation of strategic and realistic goals, which includes collecting and analyzing all of the data and feedback we received in that Phase 1 process, and then creating achievable goals that reflect the feedback that we received. Phase 3 will include the actual development and refinement of the plan, and in total, this entire process is expected to take about 18 months. Again, we temporarily postponed this due to the pandemic. We are well aware that many public meetings have continued to take place virtually for almost 2 years now, but we also recognize there are so many people that simply don't have access to the technology that requires. There's also a big part of our population that's still a little apprehensive about engaging in person. And these can be real issues and real barriers when it comes to engagement, so we want to be very sensitive to that. Therefore, our plan right now is to continue to monitor the COVID-19 trends and hope that once we see a steady decline, that we could embark in this process. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Does anyone of my colleagues have any questions or comments?
I have one question.
Okay, Councilwoman Ansari.
Thank you. Cynthia, thanks so much for the presentation. Just wondering, in terms of how the 8 months of public comments are set up, how much of that is going to be after an initial draft is released so that the public gets an opportunity to weigh in on an actual document?
Yes, Councilwoman Ansari, members of the subcommittee, that's a great question. And so the initial phase of engaging the community, we expect that to take about 8 to 9 months in itself, followed by another, I'd say 5 months of putting all of that data together. So in that window following that engagement, so it's right in the middle of that 18-month period, probably between months, I'd say 10 and 12, somewhere in there. That's where we would, once we have that data together, we would go back to the community and again present information on the goals that we've drafted based on their feedback.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Okay, I had a couple questions and suggestions, Cynthia. So again, thank you so much for all of your hard work and all of your leadership on this. I know that as a mother of 2 young girls, I know that you understand firsthand the importance of great public parks with amenities for our families. I do want to make sure that you and your team can work with our government relations staff to comb through the new infrastructure law to find opportunities for additional funding sources for our parks. Like you said, the last plan was done in 1988, so we need to make sure that we're able to take advantage of any opportunities that might be out there for us right now. And then I would also ask that you come back to this subcommittee in April to give us another update on where things stand with the parks master plan. And then I would also, we want to ensure there is a public process that is open and accessible to all residents. We want to have staff ready to go door to door when it's safe to talk to families about the best ways to improve our parks. Like you said, when the last time we had a master plan, I think you said it was about 600,000 residents. Is that true?
Yes, close to 900,000.
900,000. Okay, so now we're, I think, 1.6 million. And I do think that, we saw it in the budget process a year ago, how people came out. I can't remember, probably Vice Mayor can refresh my memory, but there's a new park that we're going to be getting through the last budget process. And I do think that there is a big community out there that we have not tapped into. I know that we have a lot of young families that I'm sure if we go and we knock on their doors, if we give them a survey, if we give them the opportunity to give us feedback, I think there's a ton of feedback. We just got to give people the opportunity to be able to do that. I do think that, I think it's very important that we're able to get into all of those communities. I'm sure there's still thousands of people or hundreds of people that don't understand that they can give their input to make their city better. And I do think that once they're given that opportunity, again, we saw it last year when we had so many people call in about needing that new park. And I'm sure that, this year we'll have a lot more people calling in and saying the type of amenities that they need in their parks as well. So I would hope, that we, whatever feedback we get around the budget process, we use that as the beginning of starting this process, and then hopeful to see what you will come back with in April, so that we can continue to move forward, and that we definitely get into those communities. And our constituents have a ton of ideas of what needs to happen in the parks that already exist, and I'm sure that we'll have a great plan around that. But with that, I again want to say thank you for all of your hard work on this. I know we're embarking on this new journey, but I think once it's done, I think constituents are going to be happy. Our children are going to be happy. We're in a new era of COVID, and making sure that amenities outdoors, the more amenities outdoors we can provide for our constituents, the better. So with that, are there any other of my colleagues that have comments or questions or suggestions?
Yeah, Chairwoman?
Yes, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia, for the presentation, and really excited for this process, obviously overdue. I had questions around, and I know you don't have unlimited funds, so wondering if we could support in this, but in ways that you can use technology, knowing that obviously the pandemic isn't going anywhere and has even gotten worse than some of what we went through the last couple of years. Wondering if there's online tools similar to the budget tool that we have, or assessments, or ways in which we can get more community input, if you've thought of any of those ideas.
Vice Mayor Garcia, members of the subcommittee, I think that's an excellent idea, and that's something we can certainly work with our vendor on, who's going to be our consultant, who's going to be working with us on that project, and I do think that would be something that we could accommodate.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of figuring out how we can use the resources, the water bills, whatever it is that we can to get more people to be activated and participate in this. I do kind of to Councilwoman Ansari's question, and I don't know if this is where she was going, but I do think some clarity of what we're asking people, or what the agency or what we're trying to get out of this is important. Is it that it's gonna instruct our future funding, right? Is it going, or our funding decisions? Is it gonna instruct where staffing is going? Those sorts of things. I think this is a great way for us to actually know where we want to go with it, to get community input. And so I don't know if there's a commitment from us, or also just more clarity on what we're trying to get out of it. That would be helpful as people participate. So they're just not thinking, oh, we're going to do another, plan that's going to sit on the shelves, but actually there's a commitment to have this instruct staffing, funding, and so on.
Yes, Vice Mayor Garcia, members of the subcommittee, thank you for that. Clear and concise direction and goals in the process is definitely going to be a priority for us. That's something that we will regularly work with the Parks Board and engage you and the board with along in the process. But I think setting initially clear and concise goals that the community can understand and what we hope to achieve in the master plan and keeping everyone informed throughout that process will be very important. The last plan from the 1980s, I can tell you, had 3 goals that were pretty clear and concise with several objectives under them. As I've looked at other successful master plans in other cities that have been launched, I would say most of them have 3 to 5 goals that I've read that were very clear and concise with very specific objectives under them, and they were prioritized in many of them as high, medium, and low priority objectives. And I think that's something that can help achieve some of the things that you mentioned as well.
Thank you. And again, thank you so much for embarking in this process. I do think, at least for us to think about on council, and maybe there's a question around this in when we talk to community, that obviously we have a big need. Pools, parks, where Councilman Guardado mentioned new parks in Levine or in the outer areas or the areas that are growing, but there's a lot of inner city support that we need. And so I think it's also important for us to realistically think about bond programs or whatever it's going to take to actually make this happen. What I would hate to happen is for all these great ideas, all this great input to come in and us not be responsive with how to actually get it done. And so I think that comes with the advisement of working with our government relations folks and looking for new funding, but obviously also what are ways that we can support and along parallel to this plan, making sure we can respond to the needs that are going to come towards us.
Thank you. And I guess I just to follow up on that, Cynthia, I think that we should be very clear in terms of looking on what is it that we've already committed to and things that have already been promised, right? Things that community are already looking for, and how is it that we prioritize that? Because then I do think that then we will have community coming back and saying, well, what happened to this, right? You said I was going to get a park, or you said we were going to redo this, this park, and we need a new playground, or we need this. So I think it is going to be key and important to look at what are the things that we have already promised and that we have not been able to deliver because of the lack of funding, and how is it that we prioritize that before we try to think about new things that we want to do, but then at the same time, making sure that it's equitable, if that makes sense.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I think that's great feedback, and we'll make sure that that's a priority within the master plan.
Great. With that, are there other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you so much, Cynthia, for that. And now we will move forward again. We have another opportunity for the public to speak at today's meeting. Are there any folks that have joined us today that would like to speak on this call to the public? Nick, do we have anyone?
Chairwoman Guardado, we do not.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And now this is our opportunity. Any of my colleagues that would like to see any future agenda items? No? Okay. So that is the last item on today's agenda. I thank my fellow committee members, all of our city staff and community members who participated at this meeting. And with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Window signs, which promote specials, grand openings, and other events in a store or a business, and they can get a permit to put signs on their windows, there are a maximum amount. We can cover up to 30% of your windows, for example, with signs in windows. There are also temporary signs. Many businesses use temporary banners to promote their business. And in fact, right now, the City Council has made a provision to support businesses during the pandemic by relaxing some sign standards for banners.